All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to give us an opportunity to honor and to learn a little more about Kerry Davis. Kerry started with BHInstitute in January of 1983, I believe. Yes, yeah. So almost 40 years, coming up on 40 years. And I am certain that when he started at BH, he did not think he was going to end his career as the chief financial officer. But the truth is he spent half his career in that role. And in that role, he led and guided in a very humble and powerful way. We are, I believe, a great company because of his leadership. So his impact on the company, I'm certain, will be felt for years to come. And I truly mean that. So without further ado, please welcome Kerry Davis.
Thank you, Louis. So again, hello and welcome to all of you, and I appreciate you being here today to help us as we capture some of the insights that Kerry has gathered over the years. And we've done this with several leaders in the past, and I was asking myself today, how did I end up in this place where I'm able to ask these leaders, can we have a conversation and hear from you about maybe the things that you've learned, insights that are important to you and your perspectives? And they keep saying yes. And so I just kind of landed here because it's important to me. And I think it's important that we share with the company and future generations what we've learned from some of their experience. So that's why we're doing this, and I appreciate you guys joining us. Kerry, again, we appreciate you taking time to do this.
Absolutely.
All right. So after this almost 40 plus career, you plan to retire next April, right? Some people, in hindsight, when they retire, they're nearing retirement, they really struggle with that decision and think, maybe I should have retired sooner, or what is your insight as to why now's the right time and it's the next chapter?
Well, I think one of the keys or goals of good stewardship is to leave things in a good place. And I think the company's in a really good place right now. Also, I'm healthy enough and mobile enough to be able to do other things. So.
Enjoy life going forward. That's great. For new people at BHI who want to hear a little about your background, you grew up in TRC, New Mexico. What's special about TRC or your childhood?
TRC was a fun place to grow up, close to the lakes and the mountains and everything. The dams, Elephant Butte and Caballo Dam, they made an impression on me as a youngster. If you'd known me as a kid, you would know probably that I would eventually become an engineer.
Yeah.
I love to work with, play with my blocks, and I built a city in my backyard for my Matchbox cars, and I built a dam in the arroyo next to the house. So, it was just, it was a fun place.
Who most influenced your early life?
My parents probably had the biggest impact on me. They were both teachers. And one of the things they really taught me was to pursue lifelong learning. My father went back and got his master's halfway through his career and kind of changed his career. He was a science and math teacher, and he became a special ed teacher for the second half of his career. So.
Okay. And what values have always driven you?
Some years ago, I participated in an exercise to write a personal mission statement. And I think everybody should do that. It really helps you kind of focus on the things that are really important in your life. And my mission statement lists faith, family, fun, lifelong learning, and football. No, I'm kidding. Football is not that important to me. But philanthropy is being generous with what you have.
And I know just from my experience with you, this lifelong learning piece, you've always been an advocate for a culture of learning. I really appreciate that. And that's really why we're here today. Are there any interests that have always you've been drawn to or that you've enjoyed in your life?
Well, growing up in Tier C, I came to love the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
So, water skiing, snow skiing, hiking, being outside was always important. And I love to read.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a voracious reader. I often have 3 books going at the same time.
Right.
One to build my faith, a business book, and then one just for fun.
Good. I remember you telling me that, and we asked you to participate and support the book clubs too. Where did you go to college again, and what was your educational background and focus?
I went to NMSU out of high school and started off in electrical engineering, computer engineering, way back in the 70s when computers took up whole rooms of equipment. But I knew after one semester that that's not what I wanted to do. I was interested in designing big things. I really wanted to be an architect, but I wanted to go to NMSU, and ending up in civil engineering was appropriate, I think. Structural was my focus. But I really liked the aspect of civil engineering being outside, the surveying component, being involved in construction. All of that was interesting to me.
Right. All right. I have to ask this question from a giant perspective. When you were a student and you had a deadline, let's say a paper or an essay that you had to turn in, did you submit assignments ahead of the deadline or begin the night before and do an all-night push and get it done right up to the last minute, cranking it out?
Well, I'm a pioneer,
Yes.
creative,
Yes.
so I like to be organized.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there were times when I pushed the limit, but I really liked to be ahead of time.
Ahead of time. That's your preference.
Yeah.
Are you usually early or late?
I hate being late to
Perfect.
anything.
Duly noted. All right. So you explained your interest in the college path and what led you to choose a career in engineering consulting.
When I graduated from college, I received 3 offers for employment, and they were all 3 from highway departments
Okay.
in California, Texas, and New Mexico. So I went to work for the highway department in New Mexico, in construction in the field. In August of 1982, after graduating in May, I moved to Albuquerque and started commuting to Santa Fe to work at the highway department.
Okay.
But I knew right away that I didn't want to be in government. Because the pace and the bureaucracy just weren't for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent out resumes to all the engineering firms in the phone book, and I didn't hear anything back. This was August of 82.
82.
Didn't hear anything back from anybody, not a peep, until November, just before Thanksgiving. I got a call to interview with BH and started in January.
Perfect. What motivated you at the time? So when you were making those choices about your career, what was motivating you as far as those choices go?
Well, initially it was really just providing for my family
Mm-hmm.
and working on interesting projects. And again, I think the pace of the private sector engineering, even though we were designing highways when I first started, but yeah, that is.
What was your vision of success as a young professional? I always like to hear that as a frame of reference for our early career professionals. What was your definition of success or your vision?
Working on interesting projects,
Mm-hmm.
solving problems,
Mm-hmm.
helping people, helping clients in particular solve their problems. I think that's what drives a lot of engineers.
Yeah. And you were in TNT as a highway designer in our traffic and transportation group, working on various projects. As an early career professional, what was a frustration for you or kept you up at night?
It was always frustrating getting review comments that really didn't add any value to the project. They were completely arbitrary. I'm sure there are some people in the room that can relate to that. And meeting clients' expectations kept me up at night.
Okay, so not much has changed since then. What did your ascension to leadership look like? We know now, of course, you're a professional engineer, you're working in the engineering groups doing those projects. What did the ascension to leadership look like?
Well, I mentioned that I started in TNT as a highway designer. After a couple of years, I was able to move over to CDMP and start working on subdivision designs and site developments, and became a project manager. In the late 80s, I became the group leader in CDMP. In 91, I became a shareholder in the company, an owner in the company. In 1995, I moved to Las Cruces and opened an office for the company there. And then in 97, when Mike Emery, our president, passed away, the rest of the owners thought I should be back in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
So I met Rob, talked to Rob, asked him if he wanted to join forces in Las Cruces and take over our office and move his office in with ours and combine that. And that worked out very well for everyone. I came back to Albuquerque in 97, went back into CDMP as a senior engineer. And then in 2000, decided to go back to school and work on my MBA. And then in 2002, when Larry Houston retired, we reorganized the company and created the CFO position and the C's, the three C's, and been in that role
Ever since
until January of this year,
Yeah.
when Lou took over.
That was a turning point for you to decide to go
Right.
into that area of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that going back to that MBA and making that choice, choosing leadership path over your professional expertise and input on projects, do you feel like there was any sacrifice there, choosing one over the other?
Yeah, I think there was. You can't do everything. There's business and there's technical. But, I was able to stay involved in CDMP and do some technical things and work on some projects. And it was kind of the best of both worlds, really.
That's great. All right, as a young leader, what did you do that was out of your comfort zone?
Well, moving to Las Cruces and opening the office there really required that I do a lot of things that I had never done before. And so that was really stepping out. And it was uncomfortable. There were times that it was uncomfortable, but I think that was really a growth experience
Right.
for me.
When you lacked expertise or confidence or experience, who did you rely on for advice and guidance?
Throughout my career, I've been blessed with many great leaders. Initially it was Mike Emery and Larry Houston, and then it was Brian Burnett and Howard Stone, and then it was Leslie and Bruce and Lewis, and then in addition to that, being surrounded by the expertise that we have here at this company, David and Craig and Bert and so many others.
Right. Looking back on your career, what advice would you give a young Kerry Davis?
Well, professionally or personally? Both.
Both.
Professionally, I think I would tell myself to not be distracted by other opportunities. I entertained offers now and then, and I think just know that BH is a great place to spend your career.
Nice. That's great.
And then personally, I think don't wander from your faith. I had a crisis of faith when I was young and wandered away, and I think knowing that the Bible is true and that evolution is not true, and that Jesus is the way and the truth and the life. That's what I would tell myself.
What's your biggest lesson learned or best advice regarding managing people?
I think treating other people the way you want to be treated.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to be perfect all the time. But when problems come, you need to face them head on and deal with them.
Great. These are questions related to being in the business. So are you a detailed person? I think I know the answer. Or a big picture person? Or both?
I'm both, actually. I love brainstorming and thinking big picture and thinking about the future. But I also think that you have to be in the details at least enough to know that the big picture is going to work and that things are working. So I think the people I've worked with would say that I'm both.
Okay. You mentioned the C-level leadership team that was constructed, and C-level leaders are often tasked with strategy and vision. What was your philosophy on strategic planning and casting vision?
Well, Brian Burnett really was good at establishing strategic methodology, I'll call it. You know, being able to develop a process by which, you know, we have the opportunity to step back and think about things, think about the future, to plan intentionally. You know, intentionality is a big deal with Giant, and you know, I think Brian was ahead of his time in that regard because he did set up this process that kind of forced us to step back several times a year and really think strategically. And we've refined that process over the years, and you know, I think that's important. I think that's important personally too, in addition to with business. You know, you need to take a step back once in a while and think about how things are going and where things are going.
Right, being intentional, like you say. All right, you were an engineer leading projects for much of your career. Let's talk about client management. So what should we know about managing clients?
Clients always want to know what's going on. You know, I mean, you cannot communicate too much with your client. You know, they really want to know everything. And especially when things aren't going well. You know, if things go bad, if things go wrong, bad news never gets better with time. It usually gets worse. And so they want to know right away what happened and what you're doing about it, what you're doing to fix it.
Right.
As soon as possible. When I worked with clients, I made a habit of calling them every day just to talk. And several of my clients became pretty good friends through the years.
That's a great example. And it's something we've heard before from some of the other leaders, that bad news does not get better with time. And bringing that out sooner than later is better. How did you manage risks when doing things that maybe no one had ever done before?
BH has been really good about developing consensus. You know, discussing things, talking about things. We discuss and we debate ideas and processes to reach consensus on what we should do. And, you know, we've also tried to consider unexpected consequences. So I think the key to managing risk and doing new things is really to do them together.
Bringing in lots of minds. That's good. All right, when it comes to succession planning, how did you build your bench and bring others up?
Well, I think it's important to hire the best people, really smart people, and then let them do their job. You know, try to get out of their way as much as possible.
What qualities did you value and look for in people?
Honesty, optimism, resourcefulness is really important, initiative, intelligence.
Okay. Spoken from a true pioneer. Let's consider failures and disappointments. Looking back, is there something you would have done differently? Maybe something that didn't work as planned or expected? Any disappointments or regrets?
Well, I certainly had my share of projects that didn't go as you would want them to go. You know, went bad. But I think that all of our experiences, good and bad, really make us who we are. You know, it's experience that makes us better in the future, and learning from your mistakes. And so I really don't have any regrets.
That's awesome. What's the hardest thing you ever had to do as a leader?
I think firing someone, letting people go is probably the hardest thing. We've fired a couple of clients over the years, and that's easier than firing people.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's actually fun sometimes.
Yeah.
What was it like leading the company during the Great Recession in that 2007 to 13 timeframe? And what was your role?
That was a really hard time. There were 5 years when the company our revenues went down 10% a year for 5 years in a row. And we went from 240 people to 160 people. And, with the exception of one group whose contracts ended, we really did it without big layoffs. We moved people around, we used attrition, we tried to diversify, and in that way, we handled it. And I think we did well.
What are you most proud of? And what's something that you look back on and say, I got that right?
Well, there were certainly some memorable projects, Cottonwood Mall, High Desert, Ventana Ranch.
Say that again. Cottonwood Mall, High Desert,
Ventana
significant
Ranch.
projects.
Yeah, there were some really neat projects. But I think the one thing that really I'm most proud of is our move from Courtyard 1 to Courtyard 2. That was my idea, and it was one that I nurtured and tried to convince everyone about and really worked hard to make successful. And then I wasn't able to be involved during the implementation because 2017, the year that we moved, was the year I was out most of the year doing cancer treatment.
Right. But it went off. It continued.
Thanks to the rest of the owners and Bruce and Brian and especially.
Yeah. And that was a big change for everyone. So a big project.
Yeah.
What would
Can I add something to
you
that?
may?
He did all of his regular job while doing that. And that's the part that blew my mind through that whole process.
Right.
Was
Very
all
hands-on.
of the CFO responsibilities, the normal responsibilities, then adding this really big project of moving from one building to the other. And in hindsight, it doesn't sound as big or challenging as it was, but it was big and challenging to deal with. How we were going to situate all the groups and how we were going to phase the project and all the different pieces of the budget, financing. Yeah.
Which I want to add at this point. I think I've shared this with the groups before, that we had a leader who confessed that in the time of COVID, when we were all sent home and we had that transition where we had to figure out how do we work remote, and we had to kind of rethink the way we did our work. I shared with the groups anonymously that we had a leader who was thriving because there was a problem to solve. And that was Kerry. So I hope you're okay with me sharing that. But I thought it was one of those things that not everybody can bring to the table, but that was in your strengths. That was something that solving problems was something that really brought you energy. And so I always found that valuable to share it with people. So.
Yeah, and that was something we did collaboratively too. We had a team of
Sure.
people that talked all the time about what we should do next, and I think that was successful because of that.
Yeah. What would the most significant people in your life say they are most proud of you for?
Well, that's kind of a hard question, but I think they would say that I'm trustworthy, that I can be counted on to do what needs to be done consistently without a lot of complaining.
Success is often realized alongside personal sacrifice. I consider you successful. I think you do. What did you sacrifice, and was your success worth the cost?
Well, early on, life balance was a struggle for me, as it is with a lot of young professionals, I think. I think life balance is something that we as a society and we as a company have kind of learned over the years, learned how to deal with it, learned how to respect it. My wife, Cindy, and I we've been married 31 years now, and she's been really supportive all
Solid.
that time.
Yeah. Great. Kerry, what are your hopes for the future?
Well, I hope that BH remains successful far into the future. And I hope that our country is able to heal its differences. I think we're really divided right now. And I hope that we're able to heal. I hope that we're able to remember and come to really appreciate what we have and be proud of who we are and what we are.
What do you hope never changes?
Everything changes, except the love of God. We should not try to keep things from changing, but we should try to look ahead and anticipate what the changes are and prepare for them as best we can and try to respond.
What's something you like to do the old-fashioned way?
I like to read books.
Yeah.
Paper books.
Paper books.
I like to mark in them. I like to make notes. I like to highlight things. I like to mark pages and go back to them over and over again.
Something you and I have in common. Is there a skill you would still like to master or something you're absolutely determined to do?
I've always admired artists, musicians, builders, woodworkers, people that work with their hands. I also admire writers. I hope to learn Spanish better than I do now. But I hope to do some of those things in the future. My mother died from Alzheimer's, and I hope that by being active, mind and body, I can avoid that fate.
Right. That's great. When we reflect on the most influential leaders, we can't help but think about legacy and the accomplishments a leader is remembered for. How would you wish to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as someone who cared, who cares for the company, who cares for my family, who cares for the country, and who cares for other people.
Pretty simple. All right. As we reflect on, I think, the abundance that this company and we all enjoy in this business and the relationships that impact our work, what do you want us to know, excuse me, or remember?
I think our success, both as a business and as individuals, is really based on relationships. So we need to focus on them. We need to nurture them. We need to develop them. And in the end, the best things in life are not things. I heard a quote recently that I'd like to repeat. It's that we should love people and use things and not use people and love things.
It's amazing. Well, Kerry, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time and giving us these insights that we can reflect on and ponder with you. We wish you all the best. We know we're going to have time to celebrate in the future before you're gone because there are a plethora of photos that we need to pull out. And so we'll have plenty of time for that. But again, thank you. Appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Kerry based on anything you heard or something anything you want to share in the room? Pam?
I just want to say thank you for taking a chance on me. Because you were giving me a great career.